everybody, my name is Manish, and I will be talking about migrating in Django from a REST app to an app that supports GraphQL. And yeah, those are my contact details. Quick show of hands, who knows what GraphQL is? Okay, quick show of hands, who has used GraphQL, regardless of whatever the backend is, on the client side? Cool, awesome. These will be the goals for us today. I'm going to give a quick refresher on REST and GraphQL. I want to talk about how we read data in using Django, using Graphene, which I'll talk about more, write data, authentication, authorization, performance, documentation, support, and no presentation in the barrier would be complete without a pitch. So I will include a pitch at the end. And I'm going to make this a little interactive. I do a lot of training and teaching, so would love your help in all that. A little bit about who I am. I started my career in Obama administration, went to Wall Street, worked there, and then now I run a small consulting shop called North Star Labs, where we've made, where we've trained hires, and we've made software, mostly Django, for people on the screen. Okay, REST. In the beginning of time, there wasn't REST, but REST what came, and we built so many apps and endpoints to exchange data. We did it using HTTP methods up here. We use that to signal whether we're making an operation that changes data or reads data. Quick show of hands, you've used Django REST framework before to perform all of these things. Perfect, cool. So we know the song and dance here. We use get methods for endpoints where we want to read data. And in this example, we're reading a movie. We might want to retrieve a certain particular movie, so we specify an ID in the URL path. We get something back. If we want to create a movie, we post to our backend, and we usually supply some sort of payload in that post, in the body of that HTTP request, and that persists. The backend does whatever it wants with it, usually persists it into a database, and we get some sort of signal back. Same with put and delete. We know that in REST we use HTTP status codes to tell us whether the operation existed or not. So with REST, there's this concept of retrofitting it into HTTP. We're leveraging status codes in HTTP. We're leveraging HTTP methods. This was a style of data transfer that was retrofitted into the HTTP protocol. That changes with GraphQL. Quick thing on Django REST framework. Super active, super popular library. You should use it if you haven't. The rest of this talk will be about Graphene and GraphQL, but I do want to make a plug for them. A guy named Tom Christie runs the project. He's personally answered questions I've had about Django REST framework. Awesome guy. I think everyone in this room stands on the shoulder of giants in the past. He is one of those giants. Please donate money to him. I'm not affiliated with the project in any way, but please support open source. Okay, GraphQL. So we know that there's queries, which are operations in GraphQL that read data, so they don't change anything. We know there's mutations. These are operations that write data or change data. And then there's subscriptions, which I actually personally haven't used, but my guess is it's a way to use WebSockets over GraphQL if I had to take a guess, but I'm not sure. Can anyone in the audience give some pros and cons about GraphQL over REST? Why was GraphQL created?
Too much data coming over the line, or too little data coming over the line, so that you can avoid multiple requests. You want data that you don't get back.
Overfetching and underfetching. We have to create in the REST world, we have to create an endpoint for everything. And if we get data back that we need to find more about, well, guess what? That means another request over the wire to that endpoint. Awesome, thank you. Anybody else? Why would one use GraphQL? Yes?
To be able to get a snapshot of what things look like without having to look in a million places.
Yes, and I'll just tease that out a little bit. GraphQL is embedded in a schema, and so right now in the REST world, what we do if we're talking to front-end developers, well, we spin up a Swagger little instance, or we do worse. We talk over Slack and email, and that's a huge pain in the ass because we're just talking about stuff that's already in code. Well, with GraphQL, you tell a front-end dev, hey, here's the endpoint. It delivers an entire schema with all the queries and mutations and not only the parameters for those operations, but the types for each of those parameters and the types of the data that comes back. So it cuts off a whole bunch of communication overhead, and it kind of self-documents itself. Those are some reasons. You should learn more at home about why GraphQL is better than REST, or it's better in some cases, but that's a preview. A little bit of more story time before we jump in. Graphene is the main, I would say, de facto library that you will use if you operate in Django world and want to create a Django backend that talks GraphQL. It was created by a guy named Cyrus, who just stepped down from the project. I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. He claims, I can't validate this, but Graphene is used at Yelp, Reddit, and Mozilla. Based upon the screenshot I took this morning, 1900-ish stars, 220 issues, red flag number 1. 36 pull requests, red, yellow flag number 2. Quick comparison. On the left, I'm going to show how things work in Django REST framework land, and on the right, I'm going to talk about how they work in Graphene Django. That doesn't stand for God, it stands for Graphene Django. On the left, we have a model, let's call it a note, and the note has a title and some text, kind of like a to-dos app, let's say. And we have a serializer up top that we can hook into our model that I've not shown. And then we have an API endpoint that we use. This comes from REST Framework, API View. And we use it simply to retrieve an object by its key. So here we're implementing an endpoint to retrieve a note object by its key, by its ID. And there's a little bit of a helper method to get the object. So remember how we use, in RESTland, we communicate signals and statuses by the HTTP status codes. So notice there's 404 here. This, by default, passes a 200 status code. Does this make sense? Does the left side make sense to everybody in this room? Cool. On the right side is how we would do the same thing, retrieving an object by its key in Graphene Django land. We define a type up top because GraphQL mandates that all objects have a type. We connect it to a model, kind of like up here. I'm starting to see some similarities. We specify which fields we want to expose. Hey, that's almost the same. And then down here, we say what we want to return and how we fetch it. Not particularly clear though, to me anyways. This is the return type. So this is saying this query will return a note, a field of type note. Not super clear to me on first glance, but that's how they do it. A little bit of syntactic sugar that I'm not a fan of. Note and resolve note, so we have to prefix resolve underscore for any field that we want to retrieve. So I hope all of you are starting to build an intuition and an idea about some of the decisions about how graphing Django was structured. I want to use this talk to kind of think about those decisions, whether they're good or not, compared to Django REST framework. Mutations, otherwise known as operations that change data. Same song and dance on the left, though we make use of a serializer to validate the data coming in. So remember, we're making a post operation to save a note object. Check if the serializer is valid, return a response if not that. This response, I can fiddle around with this as much as I want, and the client just has to deal with it. We're in REST land. No rules apply. I can stuff in a bajillion fields into those objects, and the client just has to deal with it. This is not the case in GraphQL. In graphing Django, we do the same thing with the object up top. At the bottom, notice we make a create operation, a create mutation, that takes into these two parameters and runs a mutate function. So this function is called, and it simply makes an object. And in fact, there is a small typo here. It should say node model.objects.create. That is missing. Sorry about that. So create the object and then return it. My return structure is hard to find and hard-coded. I have to return one object of this type that will precisely contain those three fields. Cannot deviate from that. Let's talk about authentication. Trivia question, especially for those of you studying for job interviews. Can someone tell me the difference between authentication and authorization?
In terms of the identity, authorization in terms of permissions.
Yes. So authentication is, are you who you say you are? And authentication, to rephrase your words, are, can this person do this, this, and this, or that? Cool. So authentication on the left side, Django REST framework. Everybody knows settings.py in here. When you install Django REST framework, you set up some settings. I've shortcutted some words here just to fit everything on the slide. These are global settings applied to every endpoint. Django REST framework offers a way to do that. It also offers a way to be a little more fine-edged with applying different sorts of checks through the authentication classes field. Cool, useful, I've used it, super easy to follow. Graphing Django, you can have one view that they give you that says, okay, as any schema you pass to this view, it's going to inherit from the login required mixin, meaning it's going to require the default session token, default Django session ID. That's it. That is it. That is all they offer. Granular settings, there's some third-party support, but you might need to handle it yourself. Not great in my opinion, and a huge oversight in my opinion. Authentication should be part of any sort of these frameworks and libraries in my opinion, and the fact that they punted on it does not look good to me. But it's doable. Authorization, same deal. REST framework offers a way to apply something globally. Also offers a way to create your own permissions. Is lit permission message, and you can implement what determines whether something is lit or not. And then you can create endpoints that check against that permission. Super flexible. I have written code for clients who weren't aware of what Django permissions were and were just blown away by its ease and flexibility. Usually I create a permission per role in the Django app. Admin, super admin, general user, and then it's a breeze to create these endpoints and apply permissioning where I want to. No such capabilities in Graphing Django land. And again, some third-party support, but not much. Again, another huge oversight, in my opinion. Performance. So I wish I had a better slide here. I wish I could do an A/B test between Django REST framework and Graphene with a huge data set and a nice pretty chart to give you some proof, but I don't. But it's not in a good shape. There's a big red flag. There's an open issue on GitHub. Some of this text might be hard to read. I'll just say it out loud or I'll paraphrase it. One person has 10,000 objects, not a lot, and they are saying that it takes around 10 seconds to run. So 10 seconds to return 10,000 objects. That is laughable. Another person, a guy named Dan, is saying it takes 14 seconds to return, to perform a query on 35,000 objects. These are laughable size, small data sets, and we're talking about tens of seconds. Excuse me? That is insane. Onboarding is in a good state. If you want to spin up a Graphene Django project for your own personal project, for an in-house project, for an internal org project, you can get going. It's there. The docs are they're pretty and they have the bare minimum, which is good enough in my case. Advanced features, you're going to be swimming in GitHub issues and Stack Overflow. Probably GitHub issues. Examples library is light. Not a whole lot of examples out there. And yeah, I said that already. Support. There is decent support on Stack Overflow. And good coverage on GitHub issues. If you ask a question, you'll get an answer back. For sure. And there's new leadership, which brings me to the pitch. So, as of a couple weeks ago, I became a contributor on Graphene. I can say that now. And you can't blame me for any of these problems yet, because I'm a new contributor. And the Cyrus, the creator behind Graphene, just stepped down. This was about a month ago. He's working on a new startup. He built all of this mostly himself to pretty good success. And there are a lot of questions swirling around the internet and in this room about the future and health of Graphene. And I'm proud to say we had a 3-hour meeting at Yelp, and there are a good 24 volunteers who are down to carry the flag forward. And I'm hoping to be one of them on the Django side. I would encourage and invite all of you to get involved. I am pretty sure that this library and framework is not in a healthy state right now. This is probably obvious. But GraphQL, I strongly believe, is the future, and this library, this framework, is the de facto entry point if you're using Django. So it's only going to get more popular, and it's only going to get used more. There is a GitHub project and there's a Slack channel. There's zero pay involved and zero equity. This is the best offer you'll ever receive. Any questions?
I had a question regarding the performance section. Is it really slow because of the addition of the framework Graphene, or is it still slow you're like directly accessing GraphQL?
I combed through this issue, and it's slow because of graphene, specifically because of there's a lot of inference on types being happening, and there's a lot of meta class programming, which I don't have a lot of experience with, but I think that sort of code is heavy.
Question. If you have a pretty big API that's all REST and you want to migrate over to GraphQL, what kind of approach would you take to kind of migrate everything over?
I would first check whether that app is used by a lot of people or not, and whether it operates on a heavy data set. If the answer to both of those questions are no, so like this is a side project of yours or an internal app that's not client facing, for example, what I would do is I would go to your Swagger on your REST and pick out the queries first and start mapping out the types and implementing those endpoints on the GraphQL side. And I would stop once you've done all your read operations in. And I would check the health and the state of your app to see if it's okay, and then I would move on to mutations. Yeah.
Is Graphene currently able to do any optimizations like prefetching with the Django ORM, or is it actually, do the resolvers have to like query each thing individually?
I'm not 100% sure, but I would lean it towards it does not do any sort of caching or use a resolver in any sort of smart way. Any other questions? Yeah.
If you were to use some of the front end on the client side frameworks like Apollo or I don't know what the other ones are, but is there one that specifically works better for Graphene?
No, I personally use Apollo in my React apps, and it works beautifully. Yeah, and I just want to emphasize, if you're building projects that don't go at scale, using Graphene is a breeze, and it's good. It can get better, but it's good. I might be painting a pretty dark picture. I'm painting a dark picture for scalability purposes. If you want something rock solid and that's going to hit a lot of people, I would still go with REST framework. Yeah.
One of the reasons, like you mentioned, that REST framework fits in nicely with Django is because REST is based around HTTP, Django is based around that, so a lot of the concepts are similar and can transfer. And probably with GraphQL, that's just not going to be the case. So do you imagine to get like good authentication and authorization permissions, at the row level or whatever, you'll have to reinvent the wheel a lot? Or do you think there is opportunity to use some of the building blocks of Django in GraphQL?
I don't think you'll be able to reuse some of the third-party libraries or even some of the things inside Django REST framework, aside from the serializers, which I think work really well. I personally, so a lot of my projects, they use JWTs, and so there's a great third-party library that works with Graphene, and it handles all that for me. That being said, I'm not going to go around recommending it because it's a pretty small project and it's not battle tested. I have no qualms about recommending REST framework -JWT to people because that's used everywhere. So that's my take on it. And there's PRs out there and a lot of discussion about folding in authentication. So though the picture might be dark right now, there is a path to move forward. Yeah.
Just a comment on that. I've used Django mixins to add in authentication stuff to the GraphQL interface. So you could kind of lock people out of that or limit their permissions based on their sign-in.
Any other questions? Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Rudy.